It's every Red Raiders favorite podcast. This is the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3.
Hi, how are you? Good afternoon. Happy Friday. It's Tech Talk on Double T 97.3, Double T 97.3.com, and the Double T 97.3 mobile app presented by Happy State Bank with Dr. Mike Gustafson. I'm Aaron Dickens. We're joining you from the First United Bank studio with you today until 6 o'clock. Love to hear your thoughts and comments today on the Yates Flooring Center chat line at Double T 97.3.com. We've got a pair of big playoff games coming up this evening on our family of stations. Coming up at 6:30, our coverage will begin of the Friendship Tigers as they take on Southlake Carroll. There's an error on the big board. I believe Southlake is one word, correct?
I mean,
in this context,
it's hard to find good help. Really.
Yeah, it really is. But anyways, the Friendshippers are taking on Southlake Carroll, and then on 100.7 the score, Cooper and Aledo. So a couple of Metroplex powers tonight facing off against both of these Lubbock teams.
Yeah, it's that time of year. I'll tell you what, it's a cold day. Cold
it is rather
evening.
chilly.
Yee. I think one of those games is taking place in San Angelo. Clint?
Yes, the Friendship game is in San Angelo. The Cooper game is in Sweetwater in the Mustang Bowl.
Yeah, and I'm just sitting here thinking, I don't know if that's far enough south on a day in this kind of cold. But in other words, I don't know that they're going, oh, well, that's so far south. It's 70 degrees down there. I think it's probably going to be pretty chilly wherever they are. So regardless, good luck to those teams. Estacado's going at it as well tonight.
Yeah, they have Randall. I mean, three pretty top-notch round two playoff games for some area schools.
I like it.
We have day sports going on right now. Murray State leading UMass in the Myrtle Beach Invitational, a semifinal matchup. About 13 minutes left to play in that matchup. Of course, Murray State beat A&M yesterday to advance to this game.
Yeah, and earlier Colorado played Texas A&M, and they were up about 20 with about 4 minutes left. Were the Buffaloes?
Ooh,
so rough start to the weekend there, or not the weekend, but the week here in Myrtle Beach for the Aggies.
Do you think at the end of the season, Buzz Williams will hand out stats to reporters again? That was fun last year. I don't know what the committee wants. Tell me what they want. Here's the numbers.
Yeah, the scroll. The Aggies, let's see, they lost by 28 points.
Yeah, it was 20 or so when I.
Man, that's not great. Yeah, I mean, in terms of basketball, it's true.
Yeah, they. Yeah, it's funny because, like this off season, this summer. During the conversation about expanding tournament fields throughout NCAA team sports, it was most talked about in the context of basketball, but the conversation was also about soccer, baseball, all the team sport fields, and one of the writers was, because it was SEC commissioner that was pretty loud about it.
Right, because Ole Miss, they were the last team in the baseball tournament, and they won the whole thing. And A&M maybe could have done the same thing in basketball, and then they're not really...
the writer was pulling that one out just what I want to see is your Texas A&M. It was the SEC commissioner advocating for Texas A&M basketball, and so whoever the writer was sort of pulled that out of the air and got after it.
Gross.
Yeah.
Nebraska also had a bit of an last night. The Huskers, at one point, they led at halftime 27-20, and I think this game was actually on when we left.
Mm-hmm. It was. Then it's St. John's, right?
Yeah. They were up by 7 points at the half, 27-20, and then they were outscored 50-23 in the second half. They lost by 20 points. Fred Hoiberg is becoming kind of like Billy Gillespie with Tech in men's basketball, or Dan Hawkins at Colorado with football. he's quickly becoming the latest member of that. Man, everyone thought that hire would work, and then it has just been a complete and total disaster at Nebraska for him.
Because his teams were really good at Iowa State and just competitive all the time, and sort of, to exactly to your point, like all the things that they're not at Nebraska, and it's a hard thing to figure.
This is his fourth season. In his first 3 seasons, he won 24 games combined. Good grief! 7-25, 7-20, 10-22. That's obscene, and probably won't last past this year.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so.
It's funny thinking back, like the mayor in Ames, right? All the way back to that Hoiberg, and then you go to the NBA.
You wouldn't be named garbage collector in Lincoln.
No, and you go like to the NBA jump, and the question: is it worth it leaving like what you have built here, how dangerous it is here, all of this, the magic there in Hilton, all of that, and then go to the Bulls and the spiral down.
It really does speak to a bigger topic, but it's hard for me to believe that. There's no doubt that Iowa State has a better basketball culture than Nebraska's, but it's hard to believe that the two jobs are just diametrically difficult.
I think that larger topic is you should really make a concerted effort in your own kind of internal thinking, and the media should as well, and the talking head should as well, and I guess we're part of that, to really delineate, pre-portal, post-portal, right? Pre-NIL, post-NIL. Because what did Hoiberg make a living off of at Iowa State? Transfer guys. But this was traditional transfers from way back then, where you sit out a year, acclimate to the system, then play. That was the core of their team. That was the core.
That's a good point.
Talent infusion process for that team. And now, when he took the Nebraska job in 2019, that had all changed, right? The portal was a thing. There was player movement everywhere. No longer did Iowa State, or in this case Nebraska, or Fred Hoiberg's team, maybe to be more specific, no longer could he sit there as some kind of like lighthouse, in this darkness, welcoming in all these transfers, because now everyone's doing that,
The podcast that finishes your workday in a very Red Raider way. This is the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3.
Hey, it's The Juice on Double T 97.3 and Double T 97.3.com. Brought to you by our friends at Specs Wine, Spirits, and Finer Foods. With Gus and Clint, I'm Aaron. Time for some headlines. Tennessee Titans offensive coordinator Todd Downing was charged with DUI and speeding early this morning, according to the Tennessee Highway Patrol. Downing went through the intake process at 4:36 a.m., posted a bail bond at 6:46. Titans had returned to Nashville early Friday after their win last night over the Green Bay Packers. Not great. For the first time in 12 years, USA Basketball is not atop the world's men's rankings. FIBA updated its rankings today, and Spain moved into the top spot, a sliver ahead of the U.S. FIBA's rankings were changed 5 years ago to a system that takes results from the most recent 8 years into account, meaning the U.S. no longer reaping the benefits of winning the 2014 World Cup title. We finished 7th in the World Cup in 2019. Whether it's Qatar or Qatar, either way, this is bogus. World Cup, it's banned the sale of alcohol around stadiums in that place after a last-minute bit of talks with the host country.
Golly, what a disaster that is.
We can kill the music. That's a mess. I think it's I feel bad for the people going to that event, that were, looking forward to enjoying an alcoholic beverage at the stadium. And so, like, my initial, like, visceral reaction is, what a backwards place, what a backwards, process, corrupt. Like, but at the same time, it's like, you know what? You get what you deserve. Like, when you put the World Cup in a place like Qatar, or again, whatever, where they lead on essentially like de facto slave labor to build all of their facilities, and you do business with that kind of, those folks, then you know what? You get what you deserve.
Oh yeah.
And Budweiser, when you do business with the World Cup, as corrupt and like just slimy as it is, this is what happens. Like I have this kind of mixed emotion here.
And it just shouldn't be that hard. I mean, all I'm coming at it from, and I don't even want to act like I see it through the eyes of the event organizer, but kind of on a very much smaller scale, whether it be my little first pitch luncheon over here, as I point to the Civic Center, or the Hall of Fame inductions that we've done, selling a sponsorship, albeit for, a few $100s or whatever, but still, you make a promise, you deliver on that, with announcements from the thing or logos on websites.
You don't change it 2 days ahead of time.
There it is right there. That's because I'm sitting there going, oh my gosh, Cutter made a decision that affects my relationship with Budweiser, and this should be a fairly easy deal. And that's you nailed it. I would be, I'm sitting there going, we could have done this in 20 whenever they agreed to this. I mean, they were awarded 10 years ago because they had to build stadiums and everything else. And so that's the tough part. Like, hey, Budweiser's going, hey, if you were gonna do this, couldn't we have known this in 2018? Couldn't we have known this before we agreed to it?
It's not like, and they were awarded this event in 2010, so it's been 12 years.
Yeah, because there's a lot of infrastructure, obviously.
It's not as if that country has undergone some kind of like political revolution over the last 12 years to where, 12 years ago it was like, hey, it was the Western world in the Middle East, it was, liberal and all these kind of things were allowed, and then suddenly, Sharia law or whatever, it's the same place, right? How is this an issue now when it 2 days before the thing starts? Again,
it really does make you wonder, like, what were they thinking? But I'm sure we can follow the money to get to that answer, and I don't even mean that necessarily in a corrupt way, but just they had a winning bid and whatever, and what a mess, and I tell you, between this and some of the the recent Olympics in Russia, some of those things, like, maybe because what's happened, at least that's not to say that Russia and China haven't delivered on their events, but those things are they're a little fraught. Is that a good way to say it? As opposed to, can this really just not be placed in Europe or in South America or North America, or because there can be some political grandstanding that goes along with that, especially in some of these countries. But that's a rough deal.
Yeah, because let's see, China had the Winter Games right this year. Russia had the Winter Games in 2014. China had the Summer Games in 2008. Qatar had the World Cup this year. Russia had the World Cup in 2018. It's just like, every other year it seems like you're putting one of these big major sporting events in a repressive, backward, corrupt country.
Yeah, and
which really reflects on the people that are running these big sporting events,
right? And at the very least, it's an opportunity for an oppressive regime, if you will, to grandstand.
Because you could put all this stuff in Texas.
Really could.
No problem.
It really could.
Like NRG, AT&T Stadium, Minute Maid, Globe Life Field, all the college stadiums, right? Alamo Dome. Not to mention the MLS. I mean, there are 3 MLS franchises, right?
And those, and you could probably, and some of those that you're talking about are an hour bus trip, 2 hour, 3 hour bus trip.
It's just the Austin, Dallas, Houston Triangle or San Antonio.
Yeah, Texas Triangle, that'd be pretty easy.
Love to get your thoughts and comments on the Yates Flooring Center chat line at doublet973.com. Somebody says this, it's the World Cup. Who gives a crap?
Well, you're right.
3-hour show, man.
It's not the event, and it's not the event in the U.S. that it is worldwide. Worldwide, it's as big an event as there is.
I mean, it will be in the U.S. In 4 years.
Well, and yes, and I think there's a belief that a week from today, the game that's being played between the U.S. and England will be the most viewed soccer game in American history.
How about that?
Yeah, I forget who I heard say that the other day, but and that's really interesting, and I hope we can back it up.
And LA gets the Olympics in 2028.
And LA, of all the places, is probably built as well for this, with all the wide variety of venues and swimming pools and all of those things. No, I know.
More tech talk next.
Zoo.
The podcast put together with Red Raider fans in mind. This is the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3.
Hi, how are you? Good afternoon. It's Tech Talk on Double T 97.3 and Double T 97.3.com with Gus and Clint. I'm Aaron. We're joining you today until 6. Would love to get your thoughts and comments on the Yates Flooring Center chat line at double T973.com. This person says in the chat line, I could absolutely give a hairy donkey's butt about soccer. Could you now? Bobby Hot Dog says this, so by the backwards oppressive state logic, we might also see a major sporting event in Kansas in the coming years.
Fingers crossed.
Wow, how about that?
Fingers crossed.
Shots fired. Somebody else says this, it's Texas, man. Football is king. I barely care about basketball. I can actually care less about soccer. How much more could you care less?
Yeah, is it like a big amount of room to care less, or is it like tiny?
That's one of those things that really just it's like nails on a chalkboard to me when people screw that one up.
Couldn't care less?
Yeah.
I just want you to know that I could care less.
Somebody says this, Texas is actually a huge soccer hotbed for players. So, ... Hey, so there's a football game, Red Raiders, Iowa State, tomorrow afternoon, evening really, was going to be cold in Ames. I actually read this today. They're expecting it to be the second coldest game ever played at that stadium.
I'm glad.
That stadium's not moved, right? It's been there for a long time.
I would have thought that it would have caught a winter game that might have been colder in their history. And I said this earlier this week and texted with Don Williams about it. Just, I'll defer whatever almanac historical knowledge to his almanac historical knowledge.
The Dominic?
Yeah, I like it. Texted with him and said, hey, and really I was just going through anecdotally the cold games that I can remember, and the ones that everybody talks about are the 88 and people my age, the 1988 and 1992 games, both against the University of Houston here, that involved snow. One had more of a blowing snow kind of icy roads deal, and the other one had a lot of snow on the ground, but not really the wind blowing and all, but still snow all over the field. And then I knew there was a game in 1976 that Rodney Allison played that year. They had a really good year. that game. So I went back, found newspaper accounts, and I said this on my name, repeat myself. But
did you go to the library and
No,
do those
was able to do it online.
microfilm
I've
deal? And so you're in this dark room like in the movies, and you're scrolling through.
I'm not above that at all. I've done a lot of that in the basement of the tech library and over here at the Mahon. So not above that. Done a considerable amount of that. But in this case, no, I was fortunate to be able to find newspaper accounts online, and the two Houston games played in the low 30s here, around freezing temperature. The one Rodney played in 76 versus SMU was a big win, 25 degrees, and because it was snow and they cleared it before the game, got the ice off the field, came back out at halftime, more snow on the field, that kind of thing. So, and the newspaper article talked about yesterday's high was 25 degrees. It was an afternoon kick. So,
stands to reason.
I'm treating that as the baseline, at least for the games I can remember. Most cold game I can think of that Tech's played in, 25 degrees. In a sort of a prove something else. Not that I'm throwing out there like, yay, I win. But, as best we can tell, 25 is the coldest game ever, and I don't think there's any chance that we won't break that tomorrow.
The high tomorrow, according to Google, or I guess weather.com, is 22. The hour-by-hour forecast has it being 17 degrees at kickoff, with wind somewhere between 9 and 17 miles an hour.
That's a big number.
Yeah.
And especially when it gets to the higher end of that 17. If we were sitting outside on a spring day watching a baseball game in that, I'd not even give it a thought.
Yeah.
A little pleasant breeze. The 17 up on the 17 of that with the temperature at 17. Yeesh. Mercy. Now, one thing about it, there's no precipitation involved tomorrow, so we're not going to be dealing with any sleet or anything else, from what I understand. So, snow on the field or whatever, it's just going to be
humidity of
cold.
64%, though, so it won't be just super dry.
No. And Coach McGuire talked about this last night. I figured it was the perfect question for us because he's feeding us a food topic. Wow. See what I did there? In the Tech locker room. Sorry. In the Tech locker room, broth, hot chocolate, coffee. I think it was as a pregame halftime thing for the guys to get warm.
They had that on the sideline for that LSU game.
Yes, and I'd heard that they'd done that on the sideline. Although the temperature of that game was like in the 40s
it was.
It's kind of like our Tech game last week. By all measures, a cold night, but not.
But
17.
not like remember it 20 years later cold.
Right. Yeah. But I was thinking about that, like game time. The order for those. And I'm not a huge coffee guy, but the order for those on a game day, like in a game day locker room, is probably way different than if it was tonight at the house. Because I think in that locker room pregame or halftime, I'm probably going to the broth.
Yeah, I am too.
Yeah. I don't know. And that may just be me thinking, like, I don't know if I want, like, hot chocolate rolling around. And again, I'm not a huge coffee guy. I don't know if I'd want. I mean, for me at 55, the first thing I think about, coffee, I'm going to be peeing in an hour. Now,
or something else.
At 21, I'm not. Yeah, at 21 years old, I probably would be.
Well, and I don't know how I would feel about like loading up on something just super sweet and then going out and running around. You know,
100% agree with you there, and that would start to mess with some blood sugar and stuff. And believe it or not, I did give that some thought when I was at their age. But I think whereas I'm not really excited about broth as I sit here right now. The three of us talking, it's not very exciting. But on game day, I think it wins.
Are you telling me you didn't bring any Friday broth?
No, I didn't.
Talked to Level this week, and he said that the plan or one of the tools in the toolkit to help kind of guard against the cold for the players, at least. I don't think that he's going to do this. Is Vaseline?
Yeah,
with Icy Hot.
Yeah, and that was I thought he referenced that last night on the show, that it came from Miles Cole, maybe, who played against Iowa State and Ames last year or something like that. But at the bare minimum, apparently the guys that, the Green Bay guys, the New England guys, the Buffalo, all those just insane cold weather teams, the Vaseline is all over the place, apparently.
Closes your pores.
Yeah, and like they'll layer that up, put the shirt on or whatever, and I've never tried that. Of course, the thought of, what I would do.
Who's the brave soul that's going to do that the next time there's a cold game at the Jones? Like a week from tomorrow, who's going to be up there in the stands with like a tub of Vaseline just slathering it on?
Well, I would.
There's got to be somebody.
I don't know that, and that there it is right there, because I think the utilitarian side of it, what I would need to stay warm while playing, I'm trying all that kind of crap. Maybe in practice day or two before getting ready, but I'm all right being greasy and nasty or whatever else. The out of tech game, like as a fan sitting there going, what did I do, man?
Can you feed me my hot dog? I don't want to get Vaseline on it.
I can't hold on to anything.
I'm ready for a sip of my soda now.
There's an Optimum Game Day Live opportunity just waiting for either of you guys.
Oh, that's true.
Hey, our high temperature next Saturday for OU, 67 degrees.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. No Vaseline needed.
I don't know. Unless you're just,
More Tech Talk next.
The podcast that finishes your workday in a very Red Raider way. This is the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3.
Hey, it's Tech Talk on Double T 97.3 and Double T 97.3.com. Gus, Clint, and Aaron with you for the next 2 hours here from the First United Bank studio. Love to get your thoughts and comments on the Yates Flooring Center chat line at Double T 97.3.com. So there's a football game tomorrow night in Ames. It'll be cold.
Yes,
We've
sir.
covered that angle. And this almost certainly will not happen, especially since I'm now bringing this up. But, man, it just seems like, Gus, sometimes when the world expects something to happen one way and everyone thinks that, sometimes you get a zag instead of a zig. And the point total for tomorrow is 47.5. So they're thinking like a 23-25 type game, give or take. Low scoring. We've talked about that Iowa State defense ad nauseum this week.
Sure.
They have been truly elite. They have held, I think, everyone below their season average in terms of point total. It's been a very impressive year for that defense.
And I think the complementary aspect of it that they play to is we've been on the other side of that where, and I say that really we Tech fans have been on the history of, hey, our defense isn't very good, so it's pedal to the metal offensively. I think that where they are this year, their complementary side to that is they try not to do things with their offense that put them in bad positions, put their defense in bad positions, because they feel like their defense is going to keep them in games and get off the field. And so what they don't want is an offense that's taking a bunch of chances and turning it over.
Tech has struggled with this defense historically since John Heacock has flipped the script on that defense in 2017 midseason. You've not had much success at all. You did put up a 40 spot on them last year. But beyond that, it's been really just a bunch of terrible performances against the Cyclones with your offense. And heck, this year's offense statistically might be one of the worst that you've faced them with, right? The O-line is what it is. We've talked about it all year long, although they've had their moments, and I would say last week is one of them. We've talked about at length, not necessarily the flaws of this offense, but just what they lack. All right, they have a good amount of things to be happy with personnel-wise. It would just be a lot better if you had, a speed guy or someone with some juice, whatever. And I say all that to set up. What if we wake up tomorrow and turn on the TV or the radio or both at 6 o'clock, and there's this unexpected shootout? What if it's like a 38-35 game?
Yeah, it's. I think if that were to happen somewhere along the way, I would probably text you the word sports, and you would know exactly what I mean. Like, it's one of the reasons why we like this stuff. Just sports in general. Pick your game, but just that you just never know, right? I mean, you just never know. Not what I would expect, but not out of the question. Not at all what I would expect. I mean, that would just, nobody's expecting that. But how many times do you expect a shootout and you go into the half and it's a 7-3 game?
Yeah.
So I guess the flip of that wouldn't be crazy.
It's like, I mean, I'm sure that folks remember this game in 2016. You go down to Fort Worth. Patrick Mahomes is your quarterback.
Yeah.
You're near or leading the Big 12 in scoring offense. TCU's offense is not amazing, but it's pretty good. It's okay. Your defense is the worst in the conference by far. It's just awful. And TCU's is okay. Not amazing. It's not what it has been, but it's okay. And that sucker is 17-17 at the end of regulation. Right? No one expected that.
And I would probably say that about the Houston game this year. I don't think any of us expected to walk into that game. Wasn't it 17-17? Or was our field goal to tie at 2020?
I think it might have been 2020.
Yeah, 2017.
But either way,
we have the
point
long.
stands.
Yeah, and I would just be, and who would be bothered by? I don't say bothered, but who would be more uncomfortable in a shootout? I think without question it would be Iowa State were that to happen, because both sides, if they went in at halftime and it was, let's say it's a 24-24 game, their defensive people would be shocked by that. I mean, they would be.
It's funny. I think that from a people involved standpoint, I think you're right. I think Tech would be far more comfortable in that scenario. I think from a fan perspective, I think Tech fans would be far more nervous, far more uncomfortable, because I think you're going, it's a miracle you've scored 35 points or whatever it is,
right,
whatever that number is. Surely at some point the pumpkin will turn back into the carriage, kind of a reverse Cinderella,
make you nervous,
and that ISU defense will wake up and come back to where it has been.
Yeah, if Iowa State put up a bunch of points tomorrow, in the back of my mind, or maybe closer to the front of my mind, I'd be going, oh, crap, is this life without Tyree Wilson? Whether that's these next two games in a bowl game, or just these next two games, or in Laramie, Wyoming next September, are we going, okay, it's the post-Tyree Wilson? How much of what we were was masked, if you will, or not, maybe not masked is the right word, but how much of our defensive success this year has been built on what Tyree Wilson has done, whether he's among the nation's leaders, him and Will Anderson, this was talked about on the show last night, who's believe he's forecast to be number 1-1, first player taken in the draft, the edge rusher from Bama, number 31.
Mm-hmm.
That him and Tyree are the two guys that have gotten the most pressure on quarterbacks this year.
Because it kind of goes back to our conversations about the offense, right? And how the absence of someone with some juice, some speed that can stretch the field vertically means that defenses can defend you in a more kind of honest, straight-up way, and they don't have to allocate more resources to defend, for that guy. It's like Quentin Johnson at TCU, right? His presence on the field kind of tilts the coverage his way.
You bet.
And so other people can be maybe more open or have more of a chance. And so that same principle applies defensively, right?
Yeah.
With no Tyree Wilson, you don't have to account for, okay, we got to put two guys on him, and maybe that does change things. It's a great point. Hopefully not.
Yeah, hopefully not.
But, yeah, something to watch for. More Tech Talk next.
It's every Red Raiders' favorite podcast. This is the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3.
Hello there. It's Tech Talk on Double T 97.3 and Double T 97.3.com with Gus and Clint. I'm Aaron. Would love to hear from you on this Friday afternoon. Let us know what you think on the Yates Flooring Center chat line at Double T 97.3.com. This in the chat line from Jay. Speaking of cold, how about a tribute to Brian Hall? The kicker with a prosthetic foot who said, "Don't worry, coach, my toes can't feel a thing." At the Frozen Jones in 1976, we whooped up on the Dirty Pony Express. Backups played and nobody was there. This in the chat line. Hey, Gus, were you at the game Houston versus Tech when it was driving snowstorm by the end of the game, somewhere in the 87 to 89 range? That was pretty wild.
Yep, there was one in 88 and one in 92. And yes, I was at both. 92, I know I sat outside. In 88, I might have been in the press box. Even though I was a student athlete, I used to spot for the what do they call it? The in-house play-by-play or whatever.
Sure, yeah.
In-house, whatever, yeah. But
like
kind
with
of
Rick.
Yeah. Well, back then it was, I'd have to think about it, but I think Don Williams and I were students, and Chalk Hutchison was, or maybe Chalk and I were the spot. Anyway, I was a spotter eating Danny's Fins and Hens in 88, but in 92 I was definitely outside, and we were bundled up, and the crowd was pretty sparse, and as I've told you, our seats are still row 52 and section 102. And it's like, hey, we could move down. We can move down 30 rows and about 4 sections over toward the 50-yard line if we want to. Yeah, that was I mean, really memorable stuff because of the amount of snow on the ground. Just like you just don't see that very often. We're really due for that again. Been 30 years.
So I'm reading a little bit more about the Elizabeth Holmes sentence. 11 and some change years, 135 months. She has to report to prison on April 27th next year.
Wow.
I mean, surely that's better than just like going straight there now. But I can't even imagine like going through the next 5 months or whatever, 4 months with that kind of hanging over your head.
I guess she's not a flight risk or whatever if they give her 5 months. Good grief.
Somebody says
that's tough.
She was also ordered to pay $800 million in restitution. Laughing emoji. That money is gone. Yeah, I don't know that you can, sew enough shoes or whatever it is in prison to quite make up.
A lot of license plates.
Jeez.
The legality of that is we're going to go ahead and demand that she get all of that back, and maybe that's your way of legally getting claim to everything she's got or whatever to pay back what she can. But yeah, that's probably not going to get there.
And she was a billionaire at one point.
Golly.
Everything okay in there? What are you eating, Clint?
Would you go down to the fridge?
No, it was like a little sausage stick thing.
Did you bring it, or was it down
there? No, hookup from Lucas.
Well, different.
Did he leave some for us?
No, he didn't.
Publicly.
He said, this is only for my friends. So you can give one to Gus, but especially don't give anything to AD.
That tracks. That's fine.
There's a union here, and the producers union sits on that side of the glass. What are we, SAG? Are we?
Somebody says that Holmes is pregnant with her second child. It's probably why she gets 5 months. I didn't realize she was pregnant.
I didn't either. Goodness. How about that? Here, hurry up and have this baby so you can scurry off to prison. Oof.
Yeah, she's okay. She's been pregnant now twice during her legal ordeal, her protracted legal ordeal. Wow. This on the chat line. Somebody says Bam Morris had 222 yards in that game. How about that?
92. Yeah, kind of roughed them up pretty good in 92. Took it to him, and Bam ran all over him in 88. In 88, that was when Houston sort of had their run and shoot stuff going. They were a bit of a high flying offense, and at the very end, it's a tie game late, and Tech got off about maybe 5 minutes left in the game, maybe from their own 20, got off like a 17-yard punt, just a shank-opotamus, and set them up with a short field. I don't remember if it was a field goal or a touchdown that won it, but, for all of the back and forth and just, all of this that was going on and all the crowd emotion, you're like, oh, wow, we're going to lose this game on a 17-yard punt. And then that team in '88 went to Japan, and lost that shootout. Like, what was that? Like 42-38 or something like that. And that was Billy Joe threw for 400 yards back when that was unheard of, and Barry Sanders ran for 300, which is still unheard of. And Tech has the ball, and as I recall, 15-yard screen pass, gain, Anthony Lynn, and he fumbled it at the end of the play, and they recovered it, and that was the end. But it's like, hey, it appeared
that's a crappy way to lose.
Yeah, it really did, and it appeared that like it was sort of a, hey, we're about to score last kind of a deal, because down inside of a minute, a couple minutes, and moving the ball, and defense is gassed, and it was a glimpse in 1988 of what we were going to be treated to 30 years later in terms of defenses gassed and some tempo and all that stuff. Back before that was a thing that was common, it was just a 2-minute offense back then.
Would you take 17 points tomorrow?
Ooh, you offered me 21 the other day.
Yeah, the price
I'd like
went
to
down.
land it. I don't know if 17's enough, man. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. That's just for us to win with 17. Obviously, it's going to be an immaculate defensive performance, but there can be no short fields. There can be no turnovers on your own end.
I mean, Kansas held them to 11, right?
I know.
And granted, that was when Kansas had their star quarterback, and they were a different animal.
Yeah.
But that defense, and Clint would know this better than anybody else, I guess, since he's been a Kansas football fan for now 6 weeks.
It's been a fun 6 weeks too.
Yes.
If Kansas can, granted that was in Lawrence too, but still,
Yep.
Kansas held them to 11 points.
Iowa State also gifted them 3 missed field goals that were very makeable.
True.
I haven't kept track to see if that guy's even still been the kicker or if he's just kept on shanking them left and right. But I would say it's probably not as bad as it was that day.
Feels like this is a day
Well,
that
and you factor in too the conditions, right?
feels like our fourth down stuff will be changed.
Oh, almost certainly.
Yeah.
You've been listening to the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3. Check out Double T973.com for more from Lubbock Sports Station.